You know what I'm tired of hearing about? ESG. Environmental, social, governmental responsibilities. What are you, my mom? I'm tired of seeing everyone scapegoat BlackRock, Vanguard, all these other asset management firms, as if they're the ones to blame for companies going woke, as if companies have morals, as if BlackRock and Vanguard have morals. Come on, pay attention. I'm tired of seeing everyone online get really invested in this conspiracy, as if there's this giant cabal of people from the finance world somehow dictating all this to companies. But, for all you're invested in ESG, DEI, all these other acronyms, none of you seem to have the origins right, who's to blame, where it's coming from, so let me learn you today on exactly where ESG came from, why it rose to popularity, who benefits, why it's falling out of fashion, and why any company voluntarily complied with any of it to begin with. Because the answers clearly will shock you. They shouldn't, though. Just follow the money. It's so easy. Let's start with the origins of ESG. Now, it was first directly mentioned in the seminal 2004 UN report titled Who Cares? When? Honestly, the ideas underpinning ESG as an ideology go much further back, but I'm not gonna. Now, this 2004 report was on recommendations for the financial industry to better implement and integrate all of their environmental, social, and governance-related obligations and responsibilities that the UN has foisted upon them. Now, the UN also just recently discovered the joys of stakeholder capitalism, and so as a result, they thought, hey, let's go collaborate. Let's get, 30 of the big heavy hitters of the finance world together. Let's go create this report, get some industry buy-in, and it's going to be more likely to get some uptake, and, that's a good idea. So they got together these 30. Look, all I'm going to say is if your founding fathers of your ideology include the likes of Credit Suisse, rest in risk, or Deutsche Bank, the most ethical, ESG-oriented bank I know, definitely bulge bracket. Or what about Goldman Sachs? Or what about HSBC, the literal cartel bank? Or fucking ISIS, apparently. Like, seriously, if these are your founding fathers of an ideology, I'm just saying that ideology is probably not meant to be with the most altruistic of outcomes and intents. Also, look at the bottom. It gives us the correct proper pronouns for banks. We. We. Apparently they're French. But also, damn, it's 20 years ago when they're doing that. Talk about ahead of the progressive curve. Or I guess maybe banks have just been woke for 2 decades now. We just never noticed. But anyway, from there, you had a few fake organizations start to pop up and declare themselves kings, deciding to get in on this new greenfield ideology and help to fill in the blanks on it. You had Principles for Responsible Investing, for example, in the mid-2000s, pretty early mover. The accountants, of course, got in on the action. They had their Sustainable Accounting Standards Board for developing accounting rules around factoring ESG into the impact of the bottom line. I'm sure the government will accept that I'm not paying taxes this year since I planted a few trees. Right? But anyway, of course, don't forget, they have a course to sell you. Multiple levels, multiple payments, multiple exams. But you too today could be the new holder of the FSA designation. And again, multiple levels, multiple payments. It's going to take a while. But once you get it, you too could put that Funko Pop of a credential right up there next to all the other high-value ones you've collected over the years. I'm sure this one's going to be the one to get you the job on LinkedIn. I'm sure. Just look at what all these wonderful FSA holders have to say about the value they got out of the designation. Wow. So ESG continued to muddle along for the next decade or so, only really gaining traction in the mid to late 2010s, which, funnily enough, that's actually when I first heard about it. I was in IB Geography at the time, and they love shoving UN propaganda down your throat as a course subject there. It was great, I had to learn the 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals, for example, and I don't remember any now, but I'm sure it was useful information. I'm sure I gained a lot. But anyway, so the UN itself, they were really pushing all of these different recommendations for the various stakeholders at the time, I recall. For analysts, for example, they were told to start adding ESG into their reports and analysis and, just helping others that are using their analysis to then make decisions now while factoring in the new ESG criteria. Meanwhile, banks were told to start adding ESG factors into their decision-making process for who to give loans to or who to finance. Meanwhile, the companies themselves were told, hey, you should start reporting on these numbers so we can judge you on them. Then pension funds and other large capital pools were told, hey, you should start reallocating capital towards good ESG performers so that there's kind of an incentive to do this. Then there was the consultants and advisors who the UN told, just broadly keep leeching off everyone. You guys are doing great. Good job. Then you had the actual regulators themselves who they told, hey, it would be really cool if you could make this all legally mandated so that there's no choice. And that worked to varying extents. But then you had the actual stock markets themselves, so they said, hey, if any company's trying to list publicly now, you should make them do a mandatory ESG criteria, as if IPOs weren't dying fast enough as it is. And that one actually works. Like, to this day, I don't know a single person in a private company running it that says, oh yeah, I'm going to exit by IPO. Are you insane? No one does that, and it's for rules like that. But anyway, so then after that, you had the NGOs, which, see advice for consultants and advisors. You guys are doing great. We love you, said the UN. And then finally, you had investors, who they said, please, pretty please, reward companies by investing in them who do good by ESG, so that way there's a financial incentive in all this. Please. And that was the plan when I was learning about it back in the mid-2010s. You've heard of carbon credits, right? I got one in my hands, and I'm gonna burn it unless you like and subscribe and ring the bell button. I'm watching you. All right, we spent enough on backstory. Let's get to the meat of the subject, okay? Let's get to what you're actually here for. Why are companies going woke, you ask? So I guess the foundation, the thing that really is the root of it, you gotta start with the ESG scorecard, okay? Well, what is that? It's how you measure how good a company's doing on ESG basis. What are the standards? There's no standard. There's actually 100, 1,000, 10,000, in fact. Look, here's Morningstars. Here's an equity research firms. What the fuck is this? Okay? Look at the weightings. How do you explain them? I'm sure they got internal justification. I don't give a shit. That is stupid. And the thing is, ESG scorecards are kind of vibe-based, all right? A lot of it's not measurable. A lot of it's just like qualitative. Oh, they're doing this. They stated that. They are investing in this. None of that means anything. And in fact, the reason why there's arguably over 10,000 ESG scoring systems is because a lot of funds, even ones that are off-market, like private funds, like, someone might have their own $50, $100 million modest-sized fund, and they'll have their own internal ESG scorecard. Now, why would everyone make their own? It's not just because you can't trust guys like Morningstar. It's also because a lot of times ESG may kind of frown upon companies that are really good. Like, let's say, for example, you want to, oil's about to hit a boom time, and you know this, but it's oil, okay? There's no way that's ESG. Yes, it is. It could be. Now you look at the oil industry, and you're like, okay, well, how's everyone doing on an ESG basis, okay? So, okay, Exxon's doing great. All right, Shell's doing abysmal. Oh, well, now of that class, you could argue that Exxon is therefore the ESG pick, and now, boom, you're right back into the dirty oil money. Only now it's ESG friendly. Or other times, maybe it's like, oh, we don't allow bad supply chains to, be part of the companies we invest in. But then Foxconn and Apple, and you're like, the suicide nets. But it's Apple, okay? God damn, Apple. Imagine not investing in Apple. So you gotta do something. And so a lot of these companies, they'll end up making their own internal adjusted ESG scorecard, or they'll just do their own thing, just anything. It's a post hoc justification. But this doesn't explain why companies are complying or bending over backwards to get high scores. So the reason that companies do end up following along with all this is simple. There's a lot of funds flowing into ESG, at least until recently. It was actually one of the biggest growing types of investment trends out there. It was really just because there's a lot of money flowing in. And now if you know a lot of money is flowing in, if you get a really good ESG score, suddenly you will shoot up the rankings because you know the scorecards they're using and how they weigh them, so you can game the system, do the least greenwashiest, bare bones thing possible, get in there, And now suddenly all of these funds, they got to start buying you. And now that's upward buying pressure. You got a lot of demand for your stock. And so the price shoots up because there's no new stock being made, or hell, maybe you might make new stock and then sell it at that inflated price. There's a lot of moves you could do, but all of them have one key common factor: enriching management. The C-suite loves ESG, not because they give a shit, they say they do, but it's platitudes. What they actually care about is getting more money for themselves, personal enrichment. And so how do you do that? Well, the main way, get listed on the S&P 500 if you can do that and you're not, boom, massive amounts of buying pressure, because all those S&P 500 ETFs out there, they will buy the shit out of you. But, there's a lot of other ways too, like these ESG funds. And so you know their scorecards, you know how to game the system, so you do everything you need just to get higher and higher scores. All right, yeah, okay, so we get it. So corporations aren't going woke, they're just lining the CEO's pocket. That was tale as old as time, okay? But your folly, where you go wrong here, is you keep thinking, oh no, I think it's Larry Fink, BlackRock, Vanguard. They're the ones doing this, making the ESG funds, these evil people. They're the ones responsible for companies going woke. Because if there's no ESG funds, there's no incentive. And I guess that would work, but they're not the reason. They're a symptom, okay? You're putting the cart before the horse. Because Larry Fink, he's not up at night going, yeah, I'll make this ESG fund and then make these corporations go woke. And then they'll be like, no, none of that shit's happening, okay? You want to know what's happening, okay? Larry Fink goes out to market. He's like, I think there's a big demand for ESG investment vehicles. And you don't see any on the market, but market research says people want it. I'm going to make this fund. Because the cost of making a fund, it's a lot of money, okay? Funds are not cheap in terms of man hours and in terms of actual expenses. You know how many regulatory hurdles you got to jump through these days? Holy shit. So they're not making it out of the goodness of their heart. They're making it because it's going to generate fees. And so they're out here making these funds. Who's demanding them? If there is a conspiracy, that's it. That's where it is. It's in there. So why is there demand for ESG? That's what you should be asking. And again, I know I glossed earlier about how, ESG is older than the early 2000s. The underlying principles are, date back to the 50s, maybe you could say. I mean, back in the 50s, you look out your window and you're like, damn, sure would be nice if 3M wasn't dumping all that Teflon in my river. Damn, it sure would be nice if there was fish to fish, but they're all dead. Also, my kids are infertile from swimming in it. Also, I have cancer. God, this world sucks. That's the world they're living in, and that's where the foundations of ESG came from. It's academics discussing how maybe it would be nice if corporations internalized a little bit of the externalities they caused, instead of just going pure profit mode at any expense. It'd be nice if they didn't shit up the place so much. And that's admirable, and I agree fully with that. But, over the years, it's like scaffolding. You build on top of the shoulders of giants. And so people just keep on building and building. And we're at ESG today. There was a lot of other terms when I was in school, and that's where it starts. You see, in school, you get told about this. I was taught about it in high school. I was taught about it in university. And everyone just gets two type of ways about it. The first kind, they're like, it's nice. It's a nice bonus. I'm still investing in the highest returns. And then the second group's like, no, I'm going to personally take the L and actually get worse returns because I care more about the net impact I'm making with my investments. And that's admirable. But those people, that second group, they become government, okay? They become government workers, politicians, and so they look at the pension funds who are leading the charge here. Because there's three groups that are really leading the charge on ESG. It's institutions broadly, but I also really think pension funds specifically should be highlighted as their own category because they are really big into it. And then also you got millennials. If you have to name one retail group, it's millennial investors, mildly. And so, you got demand for this, and it was because, going through school, whether you're in business or not, you're taught, hey, it would be nice. I want to feel good about what I invest in, okay? I don't just care about returns fully. Or maybe you're just trend hopping, because it was a big trend. It was very in vogue. And so because of that, you got all these different groups of people looking to put money into it. And it's because academics for the last, half century have been teaching us ESG values building up to what it is today. Now, the ironic part about that, though, is that we're not exactly living up to it. It is very greenwashed. Take, for example, funds that are, publicly investable in that say they're ESG. They charge, let's say, 0.8%, 1% fees per year, pretty high. But if you look at their actual fund holdings, 2/3 of it aren't in the ESG funds that you're getting. It's just in broad market indices for no apparent reason. And so, yeah, you're paying 0.8%, but if 2/3 of what you're investing in is just the S&P 500, First off, you're not even really ESG. You're only a third ESG, but that third, you're paying like out the nose for it. Oh my god. I know how much you guys love carbon credits, so I got a second one to sell you. No, I know this looks the same as the first. I'm not reselling it, okay? This is an entirely new piece of carbon credit, and I'm gonna burn it unless you go and comment on this video. It's public. I'll know if you did or not. Alright, let's just go back up the money tree one more time to make sure we're all on the same page here. So to start, companies aren't going woke, okay? Management is responding to incentives because management's compensated mostly in stock. They want to get any sort of buying pressure possible to increase the stock price because it directly makes their net worth higher. Now, why do these ESG funds exist? To help facilitate that. They exist because not BlackRock and Larry Fink thinking, oh, let me puppeteer the market. No, they exist because there's investor demand. It's nothing more. Now, the investor demand exists because we as investors, whether you're in institutions, pension funds, or millennials if you're retail, those people and the people that comprise those institutions throughout their lives have been taught in school and university to believe in ESG. To speak favorably on it, I would characterize it as the comprehensive return. You know, you're not just looking at the raw return to shareholders, but you're looking at the fulsome return that includes externalities and all of the onsets and offsets. And so because of that, that is what they prioritize, and they think they are generating the maximum true return. And in a way, in terms of net humanity return, arguably they could be. But, you know, ESG investing is a bit of an oxymoron because, again, a comprehensive return doesn't equal dollars in the bank, does it? And so why are all these pension funds, for example, getting in on it? Our retirement money? Well, I'll tell you why. It came to be because government was filled up with that first group I mentioned earlier, the active ESG influencers, the ones who are like, I will focus on the comprehensive return and not the raw return, the true return. And so because of that, they're putting pressure on pension funds, who meanwhile have been hiring the second group of students who have been increasingly indifferent, like, yeah, you know, it's a nice bonus, I'm indifferent, I'd like it, but I'm focusing on return. But these people have been softened. You try to tell a boomer, oh yeah, let's go ESG, they'll laugh in your face, they'll spit on you. You try to tell someone who's younger, like maybe some millennial workers who are portfolio managers for these pension funds, they're more amenable. And so that confluence of factors, the softening of the internal employees within these funds, combined with external pressures from the much more proactive ESG influencers in places like government, regulatory bodies, NGOs and such, all of this combines for the takeover of ESG for a time. And so that's why there was a ton of funds flowing into it. And because those funds were flowing in, that's why companies were going woke. They were gaming the system through any ESG scorecard they could find to basically just get a higher stock price and enrich themselves. That's it. That's the conspiracy. I've perfectly laid out for you now exactly how it works, so I hope to God never again to read another godforsaken tweet of someone saying that Larry Fink or anyone at BlackRock, Vanguard, any of those stupid ETF makers or asset management firms, for the love of Christ, never again. Now you know. You've been learnt. At least be right about the conspiracy. That's all I have to say on the matter. What? I told you this would happen. You didn't end up liking, commenting, or subscribing. Now this is the consequence. You just polluted. This is all your fault. Unless you did do that, in which case this is someone else's credit, not yours. Yours is totally safe. Don't worry. I kind of want to hit the smoke, though. Whoa! Fuck yes, let's go! Fucking love burning plastic. Oh my god, fuck the environment. Whoa! Cut some